Okay, so and then you mentioned about going into Star Trek. I know you've probably told this story a million times, but just getting to audition for that, what was that whole process like? Because at the time, I think a lot of people were very apprehensive. Can they do a new Star Trek series? Can they make that work?
Everyone was apprehensive, including us. As a matter of fact, it's the only reason I took the job is because I thought, well, I won't have to do this for more than a year. And seriously, my agent sent me the script. I read the script. He said, if there's anything you'd like, let me know. So I read the script and I thought, well, this character of the android could be interesting. And so I said, yeah, I'll audition for the android. And so he said, okay, you have to go meet Judy Lowry, who was the casting director. Read for her first, and if she likes you, she'll take you to the producers. So I read for her, she liked me, and are we getting all of this on film? Is that? Yeah, good. Because it's such gold, you don't want to lose it. Anyway, so Judy Lowry, wonderful casting agent. She casting director, pardon me. She's like major, important person in show business, really. She took me to see the producers. It was Gene and Rick and Bob Justman and a few other people, and Corey Allen, who directed the pilot, was there. Corey Allen, I don't know if you've ever seen the movie Rebel Without a Cause, but Corey Allen was an actor at that time. He was in Rebel Without a Cause. He's the guy who was drag racing with James Dean and got his sleeve caught and couldn't get out of the car and went over the cliff. Really wonderful actor and a terrific director, great guy. So I read for them, and I didn't know exactly what to do initially with the part. They said, I didn't know, do you want it to be more like a person, or do you want it to be more like a robot and sort of robotic or kind of fluid like a person? So I thought about it myself, and I thought, well, I'm going to work on him like he's a person, because the other thing could get really boring after a little while if I have to do it. And Judy came out of the room to get me, and she said, I said, do they want it to be like a person or? She said, let me go find out. She came back, she said, they want it to be like a robot. And I said, oh, well, I better leave then, and because that's not what I prepared. She said, well, no, don't go. Well, let me go back in. So she went back in, and she came out, and she said, you know what, they said that maybe they want you to read for Riker. And I went, Riker? I don't want to play Riker. I said, I'm leaving. And she said, no, don't go. Let me just see. And so she goes back in, and she comes out, all right, you can read it any way you want to. I said, all right. So I went in, and I did my thing, and I had probably 6 auditions in total. I kept coming back, and they kept, well, you know, there were a lot of guys up for the part, and it kept becoming fewer and fewer and fewer, and then finally it was me, and I went to the network, and they said fine, the studio said fine, and the rest is history, and I got to play the part.
At what point, yes, thank God. At what point did you find out you were going to be working with DeForest Kelley in that episode? I mean, because that was obviously, I mean, that's a pretty cool thing to do to kick it off with. Yeah.
Well, I think it was in the pilot script that he was doing it. DeForest, well, he was a great guy. And I know everybody from the original series pretty well. I mean, I've met them all many times. I've hung out with them. And I think they would all agree that DeForest was the best of all of them. And I liked all of them, but I think they would agree. DeForest was just a true gentleman and a wonderful person. And from the very beginning, he was supportive of our show and didn't feel threatened by the fact that there was going to be more Star Trek. He was great. But I was going to tell you one thing really quickly. The character, when I read the script, I thought the character's name was Data. And so, because that's what they used to say, Data. And so I went in, and we had a read-through of the first script, a table read, at the Sheraton Hotel in the Valley in LA. And we all met for the first time. Gene Roddenberry was there, Patrick came in, we were all there. And we started to read the script. And the first person to say it was Patrick, and he said, "Data, were you?" And I went, "Oh, I'm sorry. Is the character Data or Data?" And Gene said, "Let's set a rule right now. Whoever says the thing first, that's the way it's pronounced." And so I became Data that day. And it held, by the way, through the entire series and all the films. If there was a character or a race of people or beings, whoever said it first, that's the way it was pronounced. And that's the way it went all the way. It's how I became Data. And as a matter of fact, I think because I became Data that day, I think the word became Data most of the time. I think it was really Data was the standard before that. And I just think, so Patrick Stewart is responsible for the way the world pronounces the word Data.
Thank goodness he didn't say Data or something.
You know what? Seriously, I have had people come up to me and say, "Oh, you played Dada." And I'm like, "Dada? Nobody says Dada. What is that?" You know, but...
I also wanted to ask you, because our first convention that we did here in Irving, which was 5 years ago, we had Leonard Nimoy here as a guest, and unfortunately Leonard recently passed away. And do you have any recollections of working with him and like some good stories or a story you can tell us about working with him on the set?
You know what? We worked together in a two-part episode. Unification, was that it? You know, I said guess. I got it right. I've seen, by the way, about 20 episodes of the series. Seriously, I watched from the beginning. I watched the whole, well, not the whole first year, because I think we did 26. But and then I kind of got to a point where I went, hey, you know what? I'm spending a lot of time doing this show. We're working 16-hour days every day for 10 months. I go home, I learn the lines, I'm reading the scripts, I'm acting in the scripts. I really don't need to spend my time watching it too. And so I haven't seen about 150 episodes of the show. I'm told they're very good.
Just the ones where Data is the focus.
Particularly
right.
The episodes, yes. But anyway, so it was always a treat when one of the actors from the original series worked the show. And Leonard was a special treat because he was Spock, you know? And Leonard was a good guy. I got to know Leonard a bit. I went to parties at his house. Were you guys invited? Oh, I'm sorry. No, I went to parties at his house, and he and I, we did a radio play together for John Delancey. Working on the set with him was great. I was going to tell you something about Leonard. Oh, I did a convention with Leonard one time, and it was a creation convention. We did, you know creation, right?
Yes. They're not us.
Yeah. I thought you were going to deny you'd ever heard of them. But,
No, I've definitely heard of them.
okay, so we did this convention, and they had arranged a photo op with me and Leonard together. What would you pay for that? But anyway, we're sitting there, and well, I came in. Leonard was doing solo photo ops when I came in, and he was sitting in a chair, and somebody would come up on this side. As they would come up, they'd stand next to him, they'd take the shot, and then they'd go off that way. So they would come in, and Leonard would go, hello, take the photo, thank you, and off they would go. Hello, photo, thank you, and off they would go. And he just on and on and on. It was amazing. And so then they were ready for the double photo op, and I stood by this shoulder of Leonard's. The person would come into this side, and I said, Leonard, I have an idea. And he said, yeah. And he said, why don't you say hello, and I'll say thank you. And he said, that's a great idea. So that's what we did. People would come in, he'd go, hello, photo. I'd say thank you. And it was so much faster that way. Great idea.
He was just such a nice guy.
Oh, he's a good guy.
One of the
yeah.
best. I also want to talk, you were nominated for a Saturn Award for 2 different films at the same time, both Independence Day and First Contact, and you won the Saturn Award for First Contact.
Yes.
Was there, now had you won that for ID4 and not First Contact, would you have felt differently about it? Because I think both performances are terrific performances.
Thank you.
Yes.
I totally agree with you. Let me tell you a little story about my Saturn Award. Hi. What you doing? You switching? Because she was lying, wasn't she? I didn't say a word of that. Thank you so much for being honest for once. I won the Saturn Award for playing Data in, you know what the Saturn Award is, by the way? Yeah, Saturn Award is one of the thousands of award ceremonies they have in Hollywood, and it celebrates sci-fi, fantasy, and horror, I believe. And it's gotten bigger and bigger through the years because, you know, sci-fi and fantasy have gotten bigger and bigger through the years. I mean, obviously I was nominated for 2 different things, you know. Now it would be, it's tough to get a nomination because there's so much sci-fi and fantasy. But, so I won the award, and I happened to be in New York at the time. And I hope this goes out on film, on this story, because, you know, could use some detective work. But so I won the award. I was in New York doing a play, and my manager, one of my managers, I had 2 managers, they worked together. They picked up the award for me, and it's quite a handsome award. It's bigger than the Oscar. I mean, it's gigantic, and it's like Saturn, right? On a pedestal.
I dare say it looks cooler than the Oscar.
Well, I think it does in a way. Except if you know that Cedric Gibbons designed the Oscar, that's, you know, which I know you knew. Cedric Gibbons, look it up. Anyway, so I went to my I came back from New York, I went to my manager's office. There it was on their bookshelf, and I said, wow, that's so great. They said, do you want to take it? And I said, you know what, well, you guys keep it here in the office, it's kind of cool, and I'll get it one day, you know. So about 2 months later, these guys decided to split. They didn't want to work together anymore, and I had to choose which one I was going to work with. So I went with one of them, and he left the office, and he had to set up another office for himself. So I called the remaining agent or manager in his office, and I said, do you have my Saturn Award? Can I have my Saturn Award? And he said, no, we don't have it. And I called the guy I was now with, and I said, do you have my Saturn Award? He said, no, I don't have it either. So nobody knew where my Saturn Award disappeared. A few years ago, I got a letter from a woman in Australia who was an attorney, and she said, I have to tell you, I have your Saturn Award. I said, it's in Australia? But, you know, and she said, my cousin used to work for your managers, and when they closed that office and he moved to another office, my cousin thought, remembered I was a fan of the show and thought, well, maybe she'd like the Saturn Award. So he mailed my Saturn Award to Australia to this woman, and she said, I'm a little guilty about it. Do you want it back? And so I wrote her and I said, yes, I'd like to have it. This is my address, and I'd be happy if you sent it to me. And I've never heard from her again. So obviously, if you're ever in Australia and you happen to bump into a Saturn Award, that's mine. And I want it back, damn it. And, you know, I worked with a guy, I've recently been doing a television series. I know you were going to get to this eventually, but I could jump there and
go ahead.
A little segue.
Please do.
Are we doing any questions?
Yeah, we're going to.
Oh, okay.
We're about to turn it over.
Oh, okay. Because I could go on forever, you know. In fact, I might. Yeah,
but I like it.
Okay. So I'm doing this television series now for Cinemax. It's HBO Cinemax, but it'll be on Cinemax first. They may show it on HBO after that, as they did with Nick. But it's created by a guy named Robert Kirkman, who created Walking Dead. I don't know if you're familiar with that show. It's like a little zombie show that's on one of the free channels. But Outcast is also a very creepy show, and I play a very bad guy on it. And so I'm not in the pilot, by the way. If you watch it, it's 10 episodes. I don't come in until episode 2. The character is built very slowly, so I'm only in a couple of scenes for the first 3 or 4 or 5 episodes, and then I become the story. And so there was a guy working on the show. At one time he was the showrunner on Banshee, and here's a really cool show. And he came over to write one episode of Outcast, and we were talking and just chatting, and he says, you know, I used to be, this is like in November of this year, or last year, he said, I used to be an assistant for one of your managers, your old managers. And I said, oh really? We talked about him for a little while and all that. He says, you know, it's funny, I'll never forget. I opened a closet, and at the bottom of the closet in the back was your Saturn Award. I said, you're kidding. And I said, because somebody in that office then mailed it to Australia. Well, curiously, when I called about it, nobody seemed to know where it was. That's theft, isn't it? If you're listening right now, young lady, assuming you're young, I want my Saturn Award back.
You could like make a movie about the search for your Saturn Award. I mean, it's that fascinating at this point.
That's not a bad idea.
That's not a bad idea.
Would you be willing to finance that?
Sure, well, yeah.
If you got
Okay.
Maybe I'll put a Kickstarter.
We are going to turn this over to audience questions, but the last thing I wanted to make sure we got in a little something about you're returning to the Independence Day universe.
Yes.
We're going to see you in Independence Day Resurgence.
Yes, you are.
And I just recently watched an interview with you where you talked a little bit about that. You were still somewhat cryptic about your character. Obviously, you don't want to give away too much, but what can you tell us about where Dr. Oaken's going to be at this point?
Nothing. I don't think I signed an NDA on that movie. I did on Outcast, non-disclosure agreement, because they will take you to prison if they find you tell the plot. But no, Dr. Oaken is back. People were under the false assumption that he perished in the first film. I mean, yes, he was badly injured.
Scarring experience.
I mean, he was in a bad mood, for sure, as I am now. But he was deeply troubled by that experience. But he returns in this movie, thank goodness. I mean, for me. And I think the part is way more dimensional in this movie than it was in the last one. I had a tremendous time doing the movie. Roland Emmerich is a very fun director to work for. He is, of course, a master at that genre. He recreated, I mean, he brought back a whole wave of the destruction, destruction movie, and he's fantastic and really fun to work with. We did long days, and Roland does about 30 takes on every setup. So it gets really crazy after a while, but he's so open and available and easy to work with and fun and encouraging, and he let us do all kinds of stuff, and hopefully the movie will be really good. I trust you're going to go see it, right?
Yeah, we've been showing trailers for it. It looks really awesome. Yeah.
It looks really good. I mean, it's a big movie, and of course, Will Smith is not back in this one, but we've got everybody else, and plus some wonderful new people, Liam Hemsworth, and a kid named Jesse Usher's fantastic, and this wonderful Asian actress named Angela Baby, and Micah Monroe, who's fantastic, and Bill Pullman and Jeff Goldblum, and Judd Hirsch, and me, and Vivica Fox, and it's going to be something.
Yep. All right, let's take some audience questions. I know you guys got to have a few things you want to ask here. We'll start right over here, and then we'll go here, and we'll rotate back and forth. Go ahead.
I know you played John Adams in 1776. Could you say a little bit about your work on Broadway and any theatrical work you have coming up?
Well, let me just talk about that particular thing. I was fantastic. I don't know, that was a wonderful experience. I've done 6 Broadway shows, 5 of them were musicals. I don't have any coming up. It's too big a commitment right now. I'd like to go back to Broadway, and I assume I will one day, if I, ever have the time to do it. I have a 13-year-old son, and we live in LA, and he goes to school. So for me to go to Broadway right now and miss, that many months of his life, I can't do it. But 1776 was a particular joy. It's a great, great show. If you've never seen it, it always works. We knew, we were the first Broadway revival after the original production had happened in the 60s somewhere. And I dreamed of playing John Adams. It's the best part of the show. And I thought, oh my gosh, I would love to play that part one day. And somehow I wound up playing that part. I didn't think I was going to be right for it, because John Adams, I'm just not the image. And they called me and they said, would you come to New York and audition to play John Adams? And I said, this was early, I was like in January or something, and I said, I don't think I'm really right for the part. I'd love to play it, but surely you could do better than me. And they said, well, we've been looking, we haven't found anybody, we'd love to see you, if you'd come in. And I said, I'll tell you what, when is it really coming down to the crunch? And they said, well, we're going to start rehearsing in June or July, so April, we'd like to have it cast. And I said, if you haven't found anybody by April, call me and I'll come in and audition. And so they called in April. They said, we still haven't found anybody. We'd love you to come in. We'll fly you to New York and put you up for a night and you'll audition. And I said, well, when you say you'll fly me, do you mean economy? And they said, yeah. And I said, I'll tell you what, I'm going to fly myself first class, and if I get the part, you have to pay me back, and if I don't get the part, you don't have to pay me. And they said, well, that sounds like a good deal. And so I flew to New York and I auditioned, and that day they gave me the part and they paid me back for the flight. So it really got off to a great start right from the beginning. But I got to work with Pat Hingle and just so many. We were 17 actors in that show, and they were all wonderful. And it came off. We were nominated for a Tony Award for Best Revival that year. It was the same year that Cabaret opened their first revival. It was sort of a sensation. Although we got better reviews, they still won all the Tonys, and probably rightfully so.
Good question. Thank you for bringing that up. That actually was on my list, and so I'm glad you brought that up. Right here.
Let me see if that was on your list.
And there's Big River, the Adventures of Huckleberry Finn.
Huckleberry Finn?
I know your career.
Big River, yeah.
I know some stuff about you.
You look bad.
With the spotlights you've earned, what's a virtue and a cause that you want to promote to your audience? Over a little bit to the left, there we go.
What are you talking about?
What's something you're passionate about besides acting, besides your
Well,
kids?
I'm very passionate about myself.
Well, so are we, that's why we're here.
Thank you. So when people ask you that question, you say Brent Spiner, right?
But then they walk away, so I wanted to ask you what a better answer.
Yeah, I understand. Same thing happens to me. You know what? I'm passionate. There are a lot of, I'm basically, my basic charity thing that I'm into is something called No Kids Hungry. It's a really great charity that makes sure that kids get fed. And it's kind of important, and fed decent meals. There's 20 million kids under the poverty level in the U.S. I mean, it's crazy. And Jeff Bridges is a big supporter of that charity, and I don't know if you saw, it was online earlier this year. I sold some T-shirts that benefited that charity, and that's sort of my thing. Is there's so many areas of humanity and life that need help and support. So many diseases and problems that need addressing. But it seems to me that hunger is something really easily solved. I mean, we waste so much food, it's just ridiculous. And that anybody in this country, much less the world, should be hungry is appalling. It just shouldn't happen. It's too easy. Feed them. That's it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
The Star Trek franchise turns 50 this year. Why do you think the franchise is so enduring, and what role did your show play in that?
Well, you know what? I've thought about that question. What makes Star Trek so enduring? And I've thought about it, and finally what I come to is, it's got to be me, right? I mean, what else could it be? Thank you, Mark. Why is it so enduring? I don't know. I think it's entertaining, mostly, and I think it's involving. It's all involving. It's like Star Trek doesn't make any judgments on who people are, what they look like. It's for everybody. And you know, Gene was something of a philosopher, a visionary. You've heard that before. But he really came up with some great stuff, and it was something that could include everybody, and no one's left out or treated. You know, the prime directive, it's a brilliant concept. And, you know, people say it's because of its positive vision of the future. I don't know about that. I mean, maybe. I'm not sure how positive that vision is, frankly, in that there are things that are positive, like acceptance of all beings, but we're still out there blowing people away in Star Trek. I mean, we have phasers and we have photon torpedoes, and I'm kind of going, what's so positive about that? But I think the idea is that the hope of Star Trek is that all people will live in peace one day. And it's got dimension, you know. This other little show, Star Wars. Star Wars.
Never heard of it.
The Force Awakens. No, I'm kidding. It was just fine, JJ. Just fine. I mean, it was very entertaining. But Star Wars is a different animal. It's a different beast. It really is. Star Wars is good and bad. It's black and white. It's evil versus good. That's basically what it's about. And Star Trek is a little more dimensional and philosophical, and has a reflection on. It tries to reflect on our time from the perspective of the future. And what was your question?
Did your show play a role in that enduring?
No, we had nothing to do with that. I guess we did, you know? I mean, Star Trek is the great American franchise. It really is. It's, you know, it's like James Bond. There's only a few great long-term franchises. Doctor Who, Star Trek, James Bond, and Star Wars. But Star Wars hasn't done as many hours as everyone else has. But I think Star Trek is the greatest piece of American entertainment ever. And I don't say that, you know, it had nothing to do with me, really. But, well, a little bit. But no, really, we think about Star Trek has been around 50 years, half a century, when Star Trek wasn't available, when it wasn't on. And It's really kind of amazing. And I can't think of anything else that's an American phenomenon that has lasted as long as Star Trek has. And there's a reason for it. It's because of me.